my mom never really taught me how to cook. But because she made everything from scratch, I developed a really good palate. And when it came time to open a restaurant, there were great and fun Korean restaurants in Ann Arbor. But I wanted to see a Korean food done the way that I would like to eat. And I wasn't seeing that in this town yet.
I love this space, Ji Hye. Thank you for having us here at Miss Kim's. Do you look around and what do you think?
Thank you for coming out and chatting with us. I look around and it takes a lot of effort to actually take it in and take a step back because usually I look at it with like an operator's eyes. So I'm like, oh, that table needs a
what do we need to fix? What do I need to change?
Yeah, that spoon is not straight. So that's what I initially see. But I try to take a step back and take it in and enjoy the fact that this restaurant has survived the pandemic and have great team members. And we have a really beautiful space in Carytown Market and Shops with the local artist paintings up. So I try to enjoy it whenever I can.
Whenever you can, whenever you get the moment. What I love about this and being here in your space is that this was never the plan for you. I mean, when you talk about moving here with your family, immigrating from Korea, when you were in your teens, 12, 13?
13, yeah.
13, to New Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey.
A totally different life.
Totally different life. Definitely not in the plans. My mom didn't even teach me how to cook.
You just watched her?
I watched her, I watch her, and she's firstborn in the family. My father's firstborn in the family, so we have a lot of holidays at home, right? Mm-hmm. The only time that I was allowed to make anything was during New Year's when everybody is making dumplings, all hands on deck, and during a Harvest Moon Festival, similar situation with songpyeon, which is the rice cakes. But otherwise, like one time I actually asked my mom, like, because she's such a good cook, and she still holds the title of the best cook in the family.
No matter how many awards you've received.
It's my mother, right? So I asked her if I can learn how to cook from her, and she was like, girl, you're born a woman, and unfortunately, and you're going to end up in the kitchen anyway. So you don't have to start cooking as a child. So she never really taught me how to cook. But what she did was, because she made everything from scratch, I developed a really good palate. And I watched her so much cooking. So when I started like teaching myself how to cook, or when I started like cooking professionally, I picked up things really fast.
From that observation and experience.
Yes.
What about cooking, a little bit helping your mother, but seeing your mother and having all of those family traditions and Korean culture at home? How did that inspire, I guess, or become the fabric of who you are? How important was it?
I mean, it's extremely important. But when you're a child and your mom cooks 3 meals a day and she doesn't say much about it, then you start taking it for granted, right? So you don't recognize that that's really important part of you until it's gone, until it's not available to you anymore. Like, this is how incredible my mom is, because we immigrate to United States. She's working like 13, 14 hours a day, and she's still making kimchi from scratch in New Jersey. Like, she still made homemade food on the table. So I didn't even really like understand what it meant to me until I came to college away from my mother's cooking. And then I was like, oh my God, this huge part of me is missing.
Yeah, and I can't find it.
I can't find it. I cannot find even a facsimile of it, because if you're in New Jersey and there's a huge Korean American community, you can go get a pork restaurant. You can go to like a cold noodle restaurant versus like thick hand cut noodle restaurant. Like, there's more offerings.
There's so much variety.
Yeah. So even if it's not like homemade food, there's so many offerings I can go to. But when I came here, especially in like 96, 98, as a student, it was just not very available. And then, I graduated, and then I went back to New Jersey, and then I worked, and then I married, and then I came back to my college town, and still cannot find it.
I want to go back to when you came here, because you came to the University of Michigan as a poli-sci major and an econ major.
Yes, double major.
Nowhere was there food, hospitality, or anything like that. And again, your mom had said, no, you're not teaching you to cook. You just watch and see, this is not part of what your journey is.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that change? Because so many people come into college and say, this is my path. This is where I want to go. I love that yours was like, well, I'm going to blow this up completely.
Yeah. You know how like you interview chefs and then oftentimes they're like, I was 4 years old making pasta with my Italian nonna. And I knew I was going to be a professional chef. That's not me.
You didn't have the no.
No, I didn't have that at all. So what happened was, I came here and my student visa runs out, and it's legal for me to stay in the country because my father was a citizen, but it's sort of like my status is in a limbo. And when your status is in a limbo like that, and you're a young immigrant woman, and especially woman of color, hospitality industry is one of the very few industries that will welcome you in to make any kind of money. So I started working as a server at a local Japanese restaurant. And that was sort of my first like dip of the toe into the industry. And the fact that I was missing homemade food so much, and specifically Asian food. And then this was the only opportunity I had to make like any kind of money to contribute to like tuition. Yeah. So I think that's where it sort of started. And then after that, I didn't think much of it. As soon as I was able to get like a salaried job, like my goal was to get a white collar job where I sit down.
9 to 5.
9 to 5, sit down. I don't have to be on my feet all the time. But then once I got that job, I decided that I really disliked being on my butt for 8 to 12 hours.
So you took a jump, and people would say a step back. You ended up making less money, and you went into food industry.
Yeah. So the regular white collar job that I had was hospital administration and like like working with the insurance and patients and the doctors and the hospitals, right? And then that was back in New Jersey, because once I graduated, I moved back to New Jersey where my family is. And then in the meanwhile, I had met a man, and he was working for University of Michigan. So when we got married, I came back to Ann Arbor.
Back in Ann Arbor?
Yeah.
You can't stay away.
I can't stay away. Something about Michigan. Yeah. But when I came, like, this was like the first time that I can ask myself, like, what is it that I want to do instead of what I have to do? Like before, I have to get a job somewhere. I have to find like a permanent position that would help me sponsor a green card, or like I have to go to college to get a student visa. So like it was always like had to was the next step. And this is also part of the reason why it was difficult to dream long-term dreams, because I'm sort of in a survival mode. But when I finally got here and my status is figured out and I'm not in like a survival mode, and
all of a sudden it's what do I want to do?
Yeah, what do I want to do? It was such a weird question to ask myself.
Is it a scary question?
It wasn't scary. It was just very daunting, because it was like, I think nobody has asked me that since elementary school, where like, what do you want to be when you grow up? But since I came to United States, nobody asked me that. So then I started like doing a bit of soul searching. I think at the time I was 26, 27, and I put in my notice in my job in New Jersey, and then I think on a whim, I got a job at Zingerman's Delicatessen.
I mean, which is a fantastic place.
Yeah, lovely place. Like I had gut feeling and nothing else, and I took 90% pay cut, took an hourly position selling cheese. I told all of my friends in New Jersey that I'm gonna cut cheese for life.
What did your family say?
My family, it was again interesting because my mom was like, "You're married to a professor, good enough." Like, you know, you do.
Like you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it. She kind of thought this would be like a hobby that I do on the side. And she wasn't entirely wrong, because what I thought to myself was, okay, I have this question on my hand, and it's difficult for me to answer immediately because I never like thought about it, and it was never a possibility even. So at the time when I was 27, age 30 seemed like that's when you really turn adult.
Oh, so you had 3 years to play with.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm going to give myself 3 years to play with. This is going to be like my leap year, except 3 years.
Right.
So I started working for Zingerman's Delicatessen, and I worked for their specialty food. And I did like, cheese and meat, like salami, and then I did olive oil. I learned all about it.
Far road from Korean food.
Yes, yes. So I was doing that, sort of enjoying and understanding what artisanal food is, what local food was, and what tradition is, and how that gets interpreted here. So like if you have a balsamic vinegar that's made by a family who's been doing that for 2 centuries, and if we bring it into Michigan landscape, what does that look like? How do we use it? And then how do we think about like your palate? You're developing your palate. So there's a professional palate of that's legitimately good, and then there's a personal palate where like I love instant ramen noodles, but it's not because it's legitimately good. It's because there's nostalgia attached to it, right? So it's sort of like learning to differentiate those two. So I was sort of doing that, but I was so used to working. Even when I had a job in New Jersey, it was like billed as white collar 9 to 5, but I loved working so much, and I was a director of patient accounts. So I was salaried. So I was working like 70, 80 hours a week, and I didn't like that field, but I knew that I loved working, and I loved spending time with my coworkers at work. Mm-hmm. So I thought to myself, like, I want to find something that's worthy of me, like worthy of my time and worthy of my effort.
That's a really big statement, because I don't think a lot of us sit back and say, I want to find something that's worthy of me. What does that mean to you? What does worthy mean?
Well, for me, it means joy and purpose, right? Because I read somewhere, and I cannot say where, but I read somewhere that your happiness really depends on who you spend time with the most. And in modern American society, you actually spend more time at work with your coworkers and rather than your family. You see your family in the morning, you see your family at night, or if you're like me and my family is in New Jersey, you see them like maybe twice a year. So it's who you spend time with every day, daily basis, and then like what that environment makes you feel like, and are you serving a purpose? Yeah. Because I was making a lot more money in my previous job, but I didn't feel like I was finding my purpose. Whereas when I was taking 90% pay cut and then kind of like trying to portion out cheese and make sure that people have great parties, like that actually felt more purpose-driven. So I really like that. But then like after I did all that, I was starting to feel like, I can offer so much more, but there's no manager position available. And like, what do I do next? Because it's not in my nature to sort of settle at like everyday thing. I kind of want to keep doing more and more and more. So I started looking in, and I have to say, I did not have the imagination that a Jewish deli will partner with me to do Korean food.
Yeah, that seems like a stretch that no one would have guessed.
I did not have that imagination. But at the time, there was another woman who was interested in doing Asian food. So she and I talked, and she really believed in Zingerman's. And then she started telling me about this program called Path to Partnership, where anybody can apply to be a partner at an existing business or start a brand new business. So should I tell them to?
No, it's the restaurant noise. I'm sure they're filling up the bar with ice. Is that actually what they're doing? I mean, that's how it goes. It's okay. No, that's all right. Working restaurant here. We're trying to come before it started.
Okay, good.
This is part of it.
Yeah. Good.
It's okay.
Yeah. So Path to Partnership is anybody can apply to become a partner at an existing business or start a brand new business. So I thought to myself, like, that sounds really great, because even if we go on this entrepreneurship program, and even if we don't end up doing a business with Zingerman's, I would learn a whole lot.
Exactly. Yeah. You could take it wherever you wanted to go from there.
It's like a university education, but then like all I'm doing is put in my effort and time, but there's no tuition involved.
So did it go straight to Miss Kim's, or was there one more stop there?
There was one more stop.
Yeah.
So what we do is, this was when food carts and food trucks became really, really popular. So before we invested a lot of money into brick and mortar restaurants, we started doing food food cart. It wasn't even a truck. It was like a hot dog cart. Yeah. So
it was a start.
It was a good start. But we really ran it seriously like a restaurant. Every month there was inventory. We worked with Zingerman's HR department to really like do everything by the book. I met with accountants every month to
set you up. Yeah. It set you up with the understanding for this place.
It's a great practice on how to run business. And we did that for 4 years. There was a food cart park called Mark's Carts behind downtown Home and Garden in Ann Arbor, Main Street. So we were there for 4 years. And at the time, it was sort of like a Pan-Asian street food. So I brought a little bit of Korean stuff, and then my then partner brought in a little bit of Taiwanese stuff. But after a year, she decided that it was not for her. And that's why this program's so great, right? Because it gives you an opportunity to really try it out and see if it's what you want to do or not before investing a whole lot of money, and then you're in the hole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she decided, and then you decided.
So, yeah, exactly. And then we did that for 4 years. And then when it came to time to open a restaurant, I started feeling very much like I want to dig more deeper into Korean food and deeper into my family, deeper into my ancestors.
You still hadn't found the place here, had you?
No.
So you were filling the need. You were seeing what was missing.
Yeah, yeah. And for me personally, for my personal pleasure, right? Because there are great and fun Korean restaurants in Ann Arbor. I'm not discounting that. But I wanted to see a Korean food done the way that I would like to eat, and I wasn't seeing that in this town yet.
When you opened Miss Kim's, what is either the exhilaration or the, we've got to keep this up every day feeling?
Okay. I think, opening a restaurant is a great gamble. I think it's one industry where profit margin is really, really thin, and the failure rate is really, really high, especially the first year. Like 90% of the restaurants go down in the first year or something like that, right? So I took on this project to open a restaurant in brick and mortar, and then I added an extra element to it by doing it without taking tip credit. So if you go to most sit-down full-service restaurants in America, the servers make $3 and change. It's a sub-minimum tips, sub-minimum wage. So it's below regular minimum wage, and then their income is made up by tips from the customers. I've been a server, and I knew that if that system doesn't work, it really doesn't work, and it doesn't work for the servers, and it really doesn't work for the restaurant itself, because the pay inequity of servers making a lot of money and the cooks not making enough money, and then it flip-flops when the weather sucks, right? If nobody comes in because it's snowy day, servers don't make any money, and then cooks are making like a steady, stable income. So we decided to do away with sub-minimum wage and tip credit, and then we're just going to pay everybody living wage.
Flat wage.
Yeah, and make sure there's pay equity between all departments. And that was incredibly challenging thing to take on.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah, because it's like sort of like going up against the stream. Nobody else is doing it. And if you're thinking like my labor cost went like from $3 and change for regular restaurant to like $14 or $12 or whatever we were paying, it's like 4 times or more labor costs, right? So that was really, really challenging. So I remember that a lot. Like I remember really feeling some anxiety about making sure the staff are making the money that they need to be made, and then that we had enough money for the payroll to continue to do that.
So there's the business side all right here, and that learning curve that you have been pretty well prepared for, it feels like. But then talk to me about the emotional creative side, about what is going to be on the plate?
Yeah.
How is that a reflection of you? And then I think, what's the expectation in terms of when you're serving Korean food? I'm sure there's a lot of people who have a lot of opinions about what Korean food should be and how it should be presented.
Oh, absolutely. This is actually a fun struggle. This is the fun part.
This is the fun part of my job.
Yeah. So, it started. I mean, we tell people that Miss Kim is a Korean Michigan restaurant, right? Our two biggest inspiration is my Korean ancestors and Michigan farmers. We really think about like what I like to imagine is like, what if my grandmother or great-grandmother somehow landed in Michigan today and she has to cook Korean food?
What would they cook?
And she didn't have a lot of access to the usual Korean ingredients. What would she cook? So I start from there. And that's where my research started, looking into sort of history of Korean cuisine. And I like, whenever I want to put a dish on the menu, I study that dish. I look into like, well, what does this dish look like in Korea now? And what does it look like in different regions of Korea? And what did it look like 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago? And how did that evolve with the people who are cooking it? How did that change with the Korean history? Because if you start looking into the story of a dish, then you cannot separate that from the story of a country and then the story of the people. So when I look at that, then I can sort of like get a grasp of like a sense of the dish rather than a snapshot of a dish. And then I feel a little more qualified, or I give myself a permission to maybe add like one more sentence on that story that is really reflective of where I am and what season I am in, right? And that is Michigan. And I do have to say, I initially started this because when the Yelp reviews roll in, like, this is not authentic Korean food, or this is not.
I was going to ask you how you feel about
my
critics.
grandmother used to make. I wanted to tell them, aha, it may not have been what your grandmother made, but my Korean ancestors and your Korean ancestors did this other thing 100 years ago or 200 years ago. I wanted to be able to tell the story, and it was a little bit like defense mechanism when it started, but it turned out to be such a blessing to do that research work.
Gosh, because you're telling your own story, really. And you've received the accolades. I mean, let's talk about Food and Wine. And now you are up for a James Beard Best Chef Award right now as we speak.
For Great Lakes, yeah. This is a fourth year that I'm nominated for a semifinalist, and hopefully I'll make a finalist this year.
When will you find out about being a finalist?
Next week, actually. Yeah, first week of April is when they announce the finalists.
What does any of that mean to you? Any of that recognition, or is it more the Yelp reviews?
No, we don't look at Yelp reviews as much because we know that we cannot be everything to everybody, and it is their truth if our food doesn't look like their mother's food
or what their expectations,
their grandmothers are. Yeah, and I don't think anybody can, replicate somebody else's grandmother's food. It's good for what it is. But my grandmother may have cooked different things. So we just let that be. And we work a lot with our customers in like telling the story and working with them and making sure they're just having a great time, whether they're looking for gluten-free or they're looking for more old-fashioned food, or we love doing that. But in terms of accolades, I mean, it's like a great affirmation, right?
Yeah, someone's patted you right here.
Yeah,
like,
it feels great. It feels like somebody's telling you, like, oh, you're doing a good job, and your staff is great, and your food is consistent, and you're consistently doing a good job. So, like, when I got the semifinalist the first year, I was like, it's a fluke. They don't come to Ann Arbor. But then, now it's fourth year, so I kind of feel like I can consider it like, okay, it's because we're consistent and we're doing a good job.
Do you get calls from chefs around the country?
Calls?
Calls, yeah. Like, what are you doing here in the community, in the chef community, or congratulations?
Yeah, I have multiple chat groups where we're just like throwing ideas or venting and sharing stories, and then I work with like other Asian American or not even Asian, but like many diverse chefs, and because inspirations can come from anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And it really started in 2021 because I felt so cooped up from 2020 and 2021, and then I started looking for my tribe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. like I started looking for other fellow American chefs, fellow Asian chefs, or like fellow operators, fellow small business owners. Like I have a friend in Florida who does Lebanese food, but she's very specific about what region of Lebanon, and she's Christian, so what like Christian history also comes into that. So even though Lebanese food and Korean food on the surface, it looks very different, but when she and I talk, our ideas fly on how to sort of like take historic dishes and then see how that plays out on a table.
What is it about food that touches us?
I mean, I think it's the universality of food. I can put a lot of philosophy onto it, but when the food is good and delicious, then it just brings so much joy, and it makes you feel like full and happy. And I also believe that, all the research and all the talks aside, if the food is good, people will know. It may not be like their grandmother's food, or it may not have been what they expected, but if we provided great food along with really warm, welcoming, like chill services, like conviviality, then I think you'll have a good time. So at the end of the day, accolades are really fantastic. I love getting them. I welcome more. But our three bottom lines really goals are food, service, and finance. And we answer to our guests and our staff, and that comes really first.
What's your biggest joy dish to cook here?
My first joy actually is the dish that I just cooked. And it's called tteokbokki. I love this dish because I sort of like grew up with it. It's a sauteed rice cake dish, and it's tossed in fermented chili paste called gochujang. And when it's the most quintessential street food in Korea, right? So I grew up eating it, and I have personal connections to it. I wasn't allowed to eat it because it's street food, and my mom called it delinquent food, and it was just not okay. Yeah, but I found my ways to eat that, and it's also one of the first dishes that I made some significant changes to how it looks currently at the time that we opened. And Korean people told me multiple times, like, American general public is not gonna like rice cakes because it's like too chewy or the texture is weird, and they're not gonna like that. But it turns out to be a bestseller, right?
Nice.
Yeah. And then when I look into this dish, then the story of this is so amazing because it starts like, from like 16th, 17th century as a sauteed rice cakes of different kinds, and then it becomes sort of like a rich palace food, and then it goes to Korean War, and they change the rice cakes to wheat cakes because it's cheaper and becomes street food. And then now a lot of young Korean chefs are using it as if it's pasta. So you see like gorgonzola cream pasta, or like a rosé pasta with lots of butter added to it. So you can see sort of like a Korean modern like history sort of play out into this dish. So we have 4 different kinds. We have plans to add more, and I have a lot of fun with this dish. And I think this is a really good example of what we do here.
What advice would you give to people who are young, all of a sudden have changed their mind about where they're heading and wanting to open a restaurant and wanting to follow their passion?
I think that it's okay. I think it's actually desirable to try different things. What I would say is that it's important to write a vision and really figure out what you want. And then when you start going for it, really go for it. Really, really go for it. And if you fail, then you learn that that's not for you. And then you can try the next thing. But I think the process of it is really important, as long as you have the vision and you have the direction.
We started off this conversation talking about how you grew up and your mom.
Yeah.
And so I'm very curious where she falls on the line of what she thinks that you've done and the food that you make, especially since she told you not to cook.
Yeah. She was, at first she didn't take it this seriously, but now she still doesn't take it as seriously, so it's good for my ego. Like, it does a person's ego well. She'll come and eat, and then she will sometimes comment like, "That's not how I cook it," but she enjoys the food, and she doesn't look at like American media, right? But my brother would show her like magazines that I've been in, like, you know, she was shown like a New York Times article that I wrote about kimchi. So now she's intrigued and proud. But it took her a few years.
It took her a few years.
It took a few years, yeah.
Well, thanks for bringing us into your story. We appreciate it. It's so nice to meet Ji Hye.
Thank you for hearing me out.
Yeah. Okay.